Preparing for a process development engineer interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 20 key questions you're likely to face. For each question you'll see a sample answer followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. What is the role of a process development engineer in bringing a product from concept to production? Process development engineering converts lab or pilot concepts into repeatable, safe, scalable manufacturing processes. I begin by defining critical quality attributes and process parameters, then establish a control strategy through experiments, risk assessment, and measurement system design. I document assumptions, evaluate yield and variability, and confirm performance at increasing scales. The goal is not merely making a batch, but building a robust process that consistently meets specifications while remaining practical for production. While answering, explain process definition, critical quality attributes, critical process parameters, scalability, risk management, documentation, cross-functional collaboration, and the difference between proving feasibility and demonstrating manufacturing robustness. Question 2. How would you design a design of experiments study for a new process? I first define the business or technical objective and choose measurable response variables tied to quality, yield, or cycle time. Then I identify plausible factors and safe operating ranges using process knowledge and risk analysis. I would use a screening design for many factors, followed by response surface optimization for important ones. Randomization, replication, and blocking protect against bias. Finally, I confirm the predicted optimum with independent runs before recommending a control range. Make sure to cover the objective, response variables, factors, ranges, screening versus optimization designs, randomization, replication, blocking, interactions, statistical power, and how experimental results translate into operating windows. Question 3. How do you distinguish critical process parameters from critical quality attributes? A critical quality attribute is a product characteristic that must remain within an acceptable range to ensure performance, safety, or efficacy. A critical process parameter is an input whose variability can affect that attribute. I establish the relationship using development data, risk assessments, and designed experiments rather than assumptions alone. For example, mixing time may influence concentration uniformity. The final control strategy links parameter limits to quality outcomes and includes appropriate monitoring. In your answer, define both terms, explain the cause and effect relationship, discuss product specifications, risk assessment, process knowledge, multivariate interactions, and how monitoring supports a defensible control strategy. Question 4. Describe your approach to scaling a process from laboratory equipment to pilot or commercial scale. Scale up is not a simple multiplication of laboratory settings. I identify the physical principles that drive performance, such as power per volume, tip speed, Reynolds number, heat transfer area, or residence time distribution. I compare equipment geometry and material behavior, then use pilot trials to challenge the assumptions. I monitor quality, yield, energy use, and variability at each stage. The best scale-up criterion preserves the mechanism producing quality, while recognizing commercial equipment constraints. Be sure to mention scale-up criteria, similarity principles, mixing, heat and mass transfer, residence time, equipment geometry, material properties, pilot validation, risks, and the need to preserve product quality rather than simply multiplying settings. Question 5. How would you investigate an unexpected yield loss during a production run? I would first contain the affected material and protect the investigation data from uncontrolled changes. Next, I would verify calculations and measurement systems, review batch records, examine raw material lots, check equipment status, and compare the run with historical process data. I would use a fishbone or fault tree analysis to structure hypotheses, then test the most likely causes with targeted evidence. Corrective actions should address the verified mechanism, followed by effectiveness monitoring. Focus on containment, data integrity, process history, material and equipment checks, measurement verification, fault tree or fishbone analysis, statistical comparison, root cause confirmation, corrective action, and prevention of recurrence. Question 6. What is process capability, and how do you use Cp and Cpk? Cp compares the specification width with the natural process spread, so it measures potential capability if the process is centered. Cpk also accounts for how close the process mean is to either specification limit. I only calculate them after confirming stability, reliable measurement, and an appropriate distribution or transformation. A high index does not prove control, it can hide drift or mixed populations. I use capability alongside control charts and process knowledge. Explain specification limits, process spread, centering, Cp versus Cpk, assumptions of stability and distribution, sampling requirements, and why capability indices should not replace process control or engineering judgment. Question 7. How would you use statistical process control to monitor a manufacturing process? I select characteristics that reflect important quality or process behavior, validate the measurement system, and establish rational subgroups based on production sequence. For continuous data, I might use X-bar and R individuals charts. For defect data, attribute charts may be appropriate. I distinguish common cause variation from special causes and define a reaction plan before signals occur. Operators investigate assignable causes rather than adjusting a stable process unnecessarily. Mention selecting meaningful characteristics, rational subgrouping, control chart choice, baseline data, common versus special causes, reaction plans, process capability, measurement validation, and avoiding tampering with normal variation. Question 8. Tell me about a process failure you solved using root cause analysis. In one project, product moisture exceeded the limit intermittently after a drying step. I contained affected lots, confirmed the laboratory method, and mapped temperature, airflow, loading, and sampling data against historical batches. The analysis showed that a partially blocked filter reduced airflow under specific loading conditions. We replaced the filter, added a differential pressure check, and revised preventive maintenance. Subsequent batches met moisture limits, and capability improved without extending the cycle time. Structure the response with the situation, impact, containment, evidence-based analysis, tools used, confirmed root cause, corrective action, measurable outcome, and how you verified the solution remained effective. Question 9. How do you perform a process FMEA, and how does it influence development work? I build a process FMEA by listing each process step, potential failure modes, effects, causes, and existing controls. I assess severity, occurrence, and detectability, then prioritize risks using the organization's scoring method. High-risk items may require design changes, stronger controls, additional experiments, or improved detection. I assign owners and due dates, then update the FMEA after testing and production learning. It is a living risk document, not a one-time worksheet. Cover process steps, failure modes, effects, causes, current controls, severity, occurrence, detection, risk prioritization, action ownership, updated ratings, and the importance of revisiting the FMEA as knowledge changes. Question 10. What considerations are important when transferring a process from development to manufacturing? A successful transfer preserves process intent while making differences explicit. I provide the manufacturing team with process descriptions, parameter ranges, critical attributes, sampling plans, material requirements, equipment constraints, and proven troubleshooting guidance. I compare development and production equipment, identify gaps, and close them through engineering or qualification runs. Training and clear ownership are essential. I use formal change control and acceptance criteria, then review early production data to confirm the transfer succeeded. In your answer, discuss technical documentation, equipment differences, material specifications, operating ranges, training, analytical methods, acceptance criteria, change control, communication, qualification, and ownership after transfer. Question 11. How do you validate a measurement system before relying on process data? Before optimizing a process, I verify that the measurement system can distinguish meaningful process differences. Depending on the characteristic, I assess calibration, bias, linearity, stability, repeatability, and reproducibility. A gauge R&R study helps quantify operator and equipment variation for variable measurements. I also check sampling and test method suitability. If measurement error is large, apparent process variation may be misleading, so I improve the method before drawing conclusions or changing parameters. Be sure to mention accuracy, precision, repeatability, reproducibility, bias, linearity, stability, calibration, gauge R&R, sampling, and the consequences of making decisions with an inadequate measurement system. Question 12. How would you determine whether a process is ready for production scale? I define readiness criteria before the final trials, including product quality, yield, capability, cycle time, safety, environmental limits, and equipment performance. I expect repeatable results across representative materials, operators, and operating conditions, not just one successful run. I confirm the measurement system, procedures, training, maintenance, and supply chain are ready. Remaining risks need documented mitigation or acceptance. Production readiness is a risk-based decision supported by evidence, not optimism. Discuss predefined readiness criteria, repeatability, capability, robustness, equipment fit, safety, quality results, supply chain readiness, documentation, operator training, validation evidence, and unresolved risks. Question 13. What is your approach to process optimization when quality, cost, and throughput conflict? I first separate non-negotiable quality and safety requirements from objectives such as cost, throughput, or energy use. Then I quantify how process variables affect each outcome, using DOE, historical data, or engineering models. A desirability or economic optimization can identify balanced operating points rather than maximizing one metric blindly. I involve operations, quality, and supply chain stakeholders early. After selecting a setting, I run confirmation trials and monitor whether the benefit persists. Focus on defining the objective function, identifying non-negotiable quality requirements, quantifying trade-offs, using DOE or modeling, considering total cost, engaging stakeholders, and validating the selected operating point. Question 14. How do you manage process changes after the product has entered manufacturing? I begin by describing the proposed change and assessing its impact on quality, safety, capacity, equipment, materials, validation, and customers or regulators. I use risk analysis to determine the evidence required, which may include experiments, qualification, or stability studies. The change proceeds through documented review and approval, with clear implementation and training plans. Afterward, I compare performance with baseline data and keep a contingency plan if unintended effects appear. Mention change classification, impact assessment, regulatory or customer requirements, risk analysis, testing, documentation, approval workflows, implementation planning, post-change monitoring, and rollback or containment plans. Question 15. How would you improve a process with high variation but acceptable average performance? I would not focus only on the average because high variation can create future failures. First, I verify the measurement system and stratify results by equipment, shift, operator, material lot, and time. Control charts help separate special causes from inherent common cause variation. I then investigate the dominant contributors, standardize critical work, and use DOE or targeted trials to reduce sensitivity. After improvement, I confirm stability and capability using fresh production data. Cover distribution analysis, stratification, measurement system checks, special cause investigation, process mapping, parameter correlation, designed experiments, standardization, and reducing variation before simply tightening specifications. Question 16. How do you incorporate process safety into development work? I treat safety as a design requirement, not a final review step. I identify hazards involving chemistry, temperature, pressure, dust, exposure, energy, and equipment interactions, then assess how scale changes those risks. I work with EHS and operations on safeguards, interlocks, ventilation, containment, emergency response, and safe operating limits. Experiments use appropriate controls and documented procedures. If a process achieves quality but creates unacceptable risk, I redesign or reject it. Be sure to discuss hazard identification, chemical compatibility, reaction or thermal hazards, pressure, exposure, safeguards, operating limits, scale effects, emergency procedures, and collaboration with EHS and operations. Question 17. What is process validation, and how is it different from process development? Process development learns how a process works and establishes a robust operating strategy. Validation demonstrates, with predefined criteria and qualified equipment, that the approved process repeatedly produces acceptable output under routine conditions. I ensure procedures, methods, materials, and training are controlled before validation runs. Validation does not replace development. Weak development produces fragile validation. After launch, continued process verification uses production data to detect drift and support lifecycle improvements. Explain development learning versus validation evidence, predefined acceptance criteria, reproducibility, qualified equipment, approved procedures, lifecycle thinking, continued process verification, and the role of validation in demonstrating control. Question 18. How would you use automation or data analytics to improve process performance? I start with a clearly defined performance problem and a reliable data foundation. For example, sensor trends can reveal temperature drift before quality fails, while automated control can reduce operator-to-operator variation. I validate sensors, timestamps, calculations, and alarm limits, then test the solution against historical or pilot data. I also consider cybersecurity, usability, and failure modes. Automation should support sound process understanding. It must not hide an unstable process behind dashboards. Discuss reliable data sources, sensor validation, real-time monitoring, automated control, anomaly detection, model limitations, cybersecurity, operator usability, change management, and measuring improvement against a baseline. Question 19. How do you reduce waste, energy use, or environmental impact during process development? I quantify material, water, energy, and waste flows so improvement targets are based on facts. I look first for yield losses, unnecessary cleaning, excessive hold times, inefficient heating, and avoidable rework. Safer material substitutions or recovery systems may provide additional benefits, but I assess quality, safety, cost, and supply implications together. I establish a baseline and verify reductions through production data. Sustainable development is strongest when it improves robustness and economics simultaneously. Mention material and energy balances, waste mapping, yield improvement, solvent or water reduction, life cycle thinking, equipment efficiency, safe substitutions, economic trade-offs, and verifying that sustainability changes preserve quality. Question 20. How do you communicate a technical process recommendation to non-technical stakeholders? I translate technical findings into the decision the audience must make. I lead with the problem, business impact, recommendation, and expected benefit, then support it with concise visuals showing quality, cost, risk, and confidence. I clearly state assumptions, limitations, and alternatives instead of hiding uncertainty. For technical reviewers, I provide detailed evidence separately. This approach keeps the discussion accurate while helping operations, quality, and leadership act on the recommendation. In your answer, emphasize audience awareness, business impact, concise visuals, assumptions, risks, alternatives, data quality, recommendation criteria, decision requests, and adapting detail without sacrificing technical accuracy. If you are still with us, congratulations! You are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.